So the target 4 on natural and cultural heritage, we have institutions of niche. There is a unit of National Institute for Nature Protection of Serbia in Niš, and we have Regional Institute for Protection of Cultural Heritage. So they are the sources of data for this indicator. We have the heritage which is already proclaimed and the heritage which is proposed for protection, both natural and cultural. And of course, this indicator should give the expenditure on preservation of natural and cultural heritage. We can have them from the local and national budgets, and financing of protection of cultural heritage happens also from the nations and international funds. Concerning the target 5 on disaster risk management, we have in Serbia the law for disaster risk reduction in emergency situations, which dates back in 2018. And there are 3 types of documents which are recommended, which should be made in accordance with that law: local estimations of the disaster risks, local plans for disaster risk reduction, and local plans for protection. There is also, we have many issues with property of land and ownership, and we have a Ministry on Public Investments which deals with disaster risk reduction and projects for that, and the Ministry of Interior, which has a sector for emergency situations. So those are all possible sources of data for the indicators for this target. Concerning the air quality and waste management, there is a city department for protection of environment. Strategic environmental assessment is made for every spatial and urban plan. Stations for measuring quality of air exist in Niš. There is a new regional, concerning the waste, new regional dump site, which is planned but not realized yet. There is urban plan of detailed regulation for that dump site, for that location. There was a new body which was created for the management of that dump site, and we also have at national level the program of waste management, which was adopted this year for the period until 2031. Local strategy for the waste management in the city of Niš expired last year, so there was one from 2011 to 2021. And this is the last target that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about targets A, B, and C of the SDG Goal 11. I'll stop here with public spaces. So we need a definition, a clear definition of public space at national level in Serbia. Inventory of public spaces is needed. What exists in the city of Niš, there is inventory of interblock areas for the urban municipality of Mediana. I already mentioned that green areas are 17% of the city of Niš, and accessibility of public spaces and their connectivity, it's a very important topic. And of course, the topic of safety of public spaces, and there is existing strategy of urban safety and council for urban safety in the city of Niš. So this was really a brief overview of what we can do within this VLR project for the city of Niš, and which are the sources for data to calculate some indicators for SDG 11, but there are also going to be indicators for other SDGs. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sinja. Thank you very much. And that's when you start working on voluntary local reviews and SDG reporting, and this is the basis, we can only smile. Okay, so I think really this is a great achievement and a fantastic starting point from where the upcoming work will be based upon. And really, yes, I congratulate you as well. And hopefully, we were actually 2-3 weeks ago in the Write Shop for the SDG 11 global report that is going to be presented in HLPF. And I was working with the colleagues working on national urban policy policies in Serbia was shown as one of the key examples. Not so congratulations really for your work, because it's quite impressive, and the city of Niš, coming into the picture is amazing. I'm not sure if Tanya is going to say something or not, or shall we proceed with the next speaker, just to make sure?
I think that Tanya just sent me that the presentation was good, sent me a
Fantastic.
message. I don't know if she can connect. She's following all what we are doing. So if
It's fine.
if not,
Maybe just to conclude. Yes, I see Tanya has a hand raised. Tanya.
oh, very
I
good.
think.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Sinisha and I, we are plan our presentation and doing in the plane and in the fantastic surrounding, and we are talking a lot of everything, and I'm very happy because Sinisha choose a niche for voluntary local review that is not only good for our city, good for because I have a very connecting knowledge in that way in the monitoring system, and I think monitoring must be include in every municipality, in every city in Serbia, because we must review what's happening. Not just the goals, also and the space, what is going in the real time, and because of that we can plan better.
Indeed, thanks a lot, Tanya. And that's more or less the hope that we have also with the project and the cooperation that is existing between the two levels, Niš and the ministry. Really make sure that Niš becomes a national champion, something that really can inspire other city in the country, and a regional reference, so that we can bring forward and make sure that other cities within the country take inspiration, start measuring, and from the measuring start better planning, and from planning impact policies and everything that comes afterwards. So definitely that's the hopefully long-term vision that we have and that we hope to achieve together to this project. So thank you again, colleagues, for your availability, for your inspiring words, and for all of your work. Looking forward to continue working together then. We go now to our last speaker, Mr. Vangtag Lomžarija. Apologies again for the pronunciation, from the city of Sredica, Georgia.
Hello.
Hello.
Glad to meet you finally. And
good to meet you as well.
Also,
the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Also glad to see colleagues and partners from Katowice Forum. Could I share presentation?
Absolutely. Please, if you can share your screen.
I think there's some sharing problem.
You can at the top of your screen you have the share button. And you can directly share your screen from there if possible. Otherwise, you can share the presentation via email with us, Vakhtang, if you consider we can share it directly. Vakhtang, can you hear us? Might have lost Vakhtang. Can you, Telman, can you try to reach out to him? Vakhtang, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes, you're back. You're
It's
back.
okay.
Yes.
So is my screen shared or not?
Not yet, actually. We cannot see it. Maybe you want to send to us the presentation that you have prepared, and we can share it for you.
Okay, sure.
You can send it in the chat or via email, because I have the feeling that for the moment we can see your screen.
Sure. Martino, I have sent it to you just.
Super. Let us give us a second as it comes in.
I will start briefly before sharing. So it now just tells me that it's unable to send, and I will send it from my personal email because it's impossible, I think. Because of size.
I see. Maybe you can also drag the presentation into the chat.
Just a moment. I have tried it, but I think it's quite a large file.
I see.
Okay, so I will try to do it without this, but I have sent it from my personal email. If it will arrive to your email, Martino, but it's 31 megabytes. So Tbilisi is a very old city with more than 15th century history and with population of 1.2 million city and 1.5 metropolitan area with 726 square kilometers, and it's about more than 1/3 of population of Georgia, and economically and socially, politically, very important city, which is now very happy for our movements and advancement on sustainable development goals achievement, and also on the because of already finished Tbilisi city portfolio with UNEC and with UN bodies, with the help of Miss Hannah and other colleagues. And this book already shown us that it's very good to do some right things, for example, building parks and recreations, and also making a transport reform which creates better spaces for public transport and more so less CO emission and so on and so forth. But it's very important to measure these things and to see the progress in figures will help more with the analysis of evaluating separate issues and separate actions which city government is doing, or private sector, or some other public sectors doing together with local government. So starting with the VLRs will show the better picture for us, and this so more specific figures, what we can change for the future, and what are main determinants for moving forward or backwards. And so in 3 days we already have a meeting with special meeting with Department of Statistics of Agency of Statistics of Georgia, where we will discuss this main KPIs which we should have for observing our advancement, and which of them are possible to add in a short period of time and in the long run also. This was one of the main findings also in San Marino, on San Marino event, and some agreement, and also statement from Tbilisi government that we should add more statistics because of just a better observation.
Sorry to interrupt. The PowerPoints are now being shown. I received your PowerPoint.
Very good.
So
perfect.
Which slide shall I be on?
Let's start from slide number 4, please.
Perfect. I hope that you can. This one.
So before pandemic crisis, Tbilisi economy was, of course, changing its development via factors around Georgia and Tbilisi, and it was mainly so quite good in terms of GDP per capita, unemployment, creation of job places and workplaces, and growing economy. But as in all over the world, our economy was highly damaged during the pandemic, and FDIs, employment, social vulnerability, and other issues were quite important point where involvement of government was essential, and we tried a lot to help SME business, so tourism business, restaurants, also so other directions which were closed first, but also opened the last during the pandemic. And local subsidies helped several of them to save from bankruptcy and going black and so on and so forth. But slides are not yet shown, as I understand. Yes.
Sorry, I can see them. Can you
Yes.
can you see them, colleagues,
Yes.
participants?
I don't see. Unfortunately, I don't see it.
Okay.
For me to follow where
we are on slide 4 with the FDI by sector.
Yes. Okay. And as you see, so FDI also was dropped quite highly into 2020, but recovery also started immediately after the pandemic has ended. And this year is in 2022, we will have even better results. The same we can say about tourism, which we already have reached the same level as we had in 2019. Please, the next slide. Where we are also very happy because of Tbilisi is named for the several times already as one of the safest cities in Europe and in the world, in top 5 in Europe and top 3 in Europe. And crime rate is very, very low, never spiked, and never tell us that poverty rate is still not the problem, and we have advancement also on this direction, but crisis and pandemic made it a bit difficult for us. And maybe if, for example, 70,000 jobs created before 2019 during the 5 years, pandemic deleted half of them, and we had to do and even have now to do a lot to eliminate these results as fast as possible. Please, next slide, slide number 6, about the environment. We are also spending quite big resources in environment creation of big size parks, garden areas, forests, and so on and so forth. And it's about 20 hectares of forests created by only from 2017, and also have created 15 big size parks in not only center of Tbilisi, but also in suburb areas where space among big building blocks were not used absolutely, and also the more even there were swamps and quite dirty places. We have created big recreational areas, big parks, and this also created not only green areas but also economy there, and business were also stimulated to create some small size points, and employment also was better off because of this. And also property prices was hit a lot because of this, and increased because of near of building areas, green spaces made some kind of positive changes. Please, slide number 7. Healthcare programs are very, very important for Tbilisi City Hall and for Tbilisi economy also. And we always try to find the gaps where central government has some financial problem for financing some medical programs, healthcare programs, and for example, liver transplantation, bone marrow cell transplantation, and so on and so forth. And also quite small, even small surgeries, and helping local population to finance part of their expenses on healthcare. is quite a huge part of Tbilisi budget, and it's essential part of our development and also caring for our populations and healthcare also. Slide number 8 is about rehabilitation of old Tbilisi with the Tbilisi Development Fund, from which from only last 5 years rehabilitated 6 different areas: Orbeliani Square, Gudiashvili, Dedayana Park, National Youth Palace, and other places, and hundreds of million euros were spent on creation, some attractions, some areas with the same architect or even better, where tourism also gained for this spending from local government, and also, of course, property prices tripled or even 4 times increased in these areas where area was and buildings were damaged a lot, and this rehabilitation created absolutely different Tbilisi districts and different Tbilisi places. One of the major directions for Tbilisi City Hall and Tbilisi City is now transport reform, on slide number 9, where we have quite painful reform because of changes and adaptation period, and of course traffic jams, as in almost all in big cities. We also have this kind of problem, but our priority is public transport, where we are trying to create several corridors for public transport, for buses on bus lanes, and also modernization of metro stations, and also minibus reforms, where we have replaced old ones which were creating not only technical problems but also ecological problems and emission problems for Tbilisi. And this reform is showing us that reform is painful, but we are on the right way to reach so comfort and accessibility on public transport, but also creating corridors for bus lanes are also not very easy, and making adaptation period not very easy for us too. Slide number 11 is about a new program of housing for Tbilisi, which is a very crucial program for Tbilisi, because of old buildings, even Soviet era buildings, and not only, are already quite a lot damaged, with not accessibility issues, with not safety, even fire safety, and other dimension of safety standards. We are trying to replace old buildings with new ones, creating this program together with local business and making public-private partnership, not the same legislation as PPP, but the model is almost the same, where together with so building companies, we are replacing about 50 buildings with the new ones in the next 5 years, on slide number 12. And this is quite expensive, but crucial program for Tbilisi, because of also quite big expenses for local government and Tbilisi City Hall or local Gamgeobas, where when we are covering rent expenses for population and inhabitants who live not in damaged buildings, and we are helping for them, or we are having quite big expenses because of making old buildings possible to last several 3, 4, 5 years or so on and so forth. But we had to start this program of replacing them completely, and we started with them, and we will receive in about averagely 3 years from starting each program new areas with high safety standards, with energy efficiency standards and safety standards, and also with a higher value, maybe 2-3 times more value than they have now. For example, if some old buildings had 500 or 600 square meter value, then after finishing this program, so they already will have at least 2,000 or even more for some areas. So it depends on district, of course. This was quite briefly, and excuse me for this problem because of sharing, and I was not following and could not change slides myself, but we are happy to have together with other partner cities in this VLR programs, and we observe it very, very important to evaluate and see the picture, not in only words and nice statements, but also in figures and measuring what we are doing and what we are actually reaching in a positive or negative way. Thank you a lot, and excuse me for these inconveniences.
Baktan, no worries. This is absolutely fine. Thanks a lot for the presentation. We're, I'm sure, all happy to hear about it and to learn more about the work of Tbilisi. And it's quite comprehensive. It's very interesting. And we had the pleasure to talk with you and our CEO a couple of days ago. And we were discussing how beautiful now enriching it would be working together in Tbilisi. Already congratulating for the work that you have been developing. And again, looking forward to bring all of these and to assess and evaluate all of this knowledge under the process of the voluntary local review as a first step for the beginning of a long-term collaboration. Colleague, we are late. I'm not lying to you. We are a bit late, and I think that we shall be having a bit of a break before having the short break, just for us to have a quick coffee. Any questions for our speakers coming from any of the participants are more than welcome at this stage to conclude the part of the presentation from the pilot cities and countries. If anyone, please don't hesitate to put your question in the chat, and maybe we quickly answer the questions right after the break. Before we get into the presentation of the different projects I mentioned. We will start because of just few commitments and we are late. We will start with the learning track as Sarah needs to jump on another session as she's moderating. So we will just adjust the agenda quickly, and I suggest that we meet now. I don't know your time zone right now. It's 2 p.m. so 10 minutes to 2 p.m. in Eastern Europe, in Eastern Africa here in Nairobi. So it must be 10 minutes to midday for Central European time. I suggest that we meet at midday, so in 10 minutes, so that we can start again our discussion with a bit of a deep dive in the different components of the project. Please do not disconnect from the meeting. Just mute yourself and your camera so that we can continue the discussion in 10 minutes. Hope this is fine for you all. I see no hands, so you probably are already in the break. And I'll see you in 10 minutes, colleagues. Hello, everyone. We give it another 1-2 minutes, and then we start. For those that are connected, please, a reminder to use the English channel for both translation to words and from Russian, depending, of course, on the language of the speakers. We start in 1 minute with the presentation of the learning track of the project from the colleagues from SARA, colleagues from UCLG. 1 minute.
Do you see the slides?
Yes, we did. Now they are not on. Yes, now they're coming back.
Okay, you see it, okay?
Yes, I suggest that we start. So we can start. I hope that colleagues, I hope that you're connected and you're back from your break. Sarah, please, the floor is yours, and over to you, colleagues.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I'm from the UCLG side. I will present the learning track of the project, and maybe first also appreciate the 4 presentations of the cities and countries, because what you say and what you have shown is always reminding us that there are so many connecting points to very concrete policies, being it transport, public space, urban growth, drainage, whatever. So we hope that the opportunity of connecting this local reality with the local reviews and the international and national reality will work very well. And of course, the impact in the territories with you on board and with you and your commitment is very promising. So the learning track in UCLG, we have been working on localization since that long time and started actually to learn, to make this learning feasible. First of all, when the agenda just came out, we saw that what local governments need to know from the SDG agenda. So what was this publication that you see on the left side? Was mainly simply and very clear, express and connect what are the usual services, the usual tasks local government can connect to each goal. So I say this because we always learn from the cities, we learn from the practices. So even we have done the statements and we have expressed the roadmap to localize, we have always set this into the context and into the very practical work of local government. So what you can see on the right are typical peer learning notes that collect practices that take up very concrete services and connect them to each other. And this brings up a bunch of knowledge how innovation can be done and how the SDG agenda can inspire and vice versa local practice. So here in the next slide, you can see how then we work. Once we have this knowledge, this practice, all the feedback, we concentrate this knowledge, and also, of course, we rely a lot on our partners into a learning system. So these are called the learning modules, and the first module is an introduction to the SDG. This was very needed, and today we look into many campaigns of our members. And I think many of you have been using this, and it's not only us, it's also the UN and looking into this campaigning constantly. And of course, this is only part of. We have then done the next learning module, which was looking into strategic planning. So this means, for example, a city like the city of Quito, let's say, they take it into the planning of government. And I think when we listen to Nice, you also have this planning affair where you look into how the SDG can really make the difference. So planning, budgeting, and of course the strategy. The SDG Learning Module 3 looks into reporting. So this means voluntary local review, voluntary sub-national review, and what reporting means. So it's not only report and make the city visible, it is also reporting to the community. And here we, of course, are convinced that the project will bring a lot forward these reporting mechanisms. And the last one is localizing the SDGs through decentralized cooperation. So this means how the cities learn from each other and projects of development projects. How can they take the SDG as a trigger to organize their work and connect much more effective? The other part, we have created an online platform, Learning with UCLG, and in this online platform you can see a lot of this material prepared for self-paced learning, but we also do moderated online courses. And of course, here we have a VLR course. Just recently, we are launching it this day with UN Habitat. That has been very, very important in VLR guiding processes and learnings. Then I come now, I want to recall, because we have this project here with us, it's not only about SDG, it is about recovery. And this is a graphic we use for our resilience modules, but I think it's here also important to remind, we talk about recovery from crisis, and the COVID crisis has brought an enormous amount of lessons to our organization. So together with UN Habitat, in the COVID, we have made like 40 sessions looking on how local government respond to crisis. And this gave us quite an important piece of what recovery means. And additionally to the SDG, in these talks, we learned a lot about public service provision. So the secure public services and be able to provide them became a very important reminder. And we are now trying to connect this to the SDG, and we hope we do this with this group as well. And of course, the COVID crisis is only one of the multiple crises we now experience through we are in a recession, and of course, climate change is the largest crisis we have to prepare for. So we think that the name recovery is meaningful, and we will see it also later in the partners' approaches that we will look into this particularly. So what is next? Of course, our local reviews online course, we will hope that you look at this and we will enrich it permanently. So these are all beta versions, and this project will help to make these online courses better. And we look forward that with you and with the partners, we can maybe do a launching event to make all this material useful, not only for the regions of the project, but also for others. Then we have foreseen in UCLG here, as part of this project, to update our module 2, because as Martino said in the beginning, and several of you already made that links, in particular the cities, that we have to go for the planning, not only the strategic planning, but also the urban planning. So this we will do, and we will therefore update our module 2 on territorial planning to achieve the SDGs. And we hope hope that your practices, but also other practices, can again inspire and be reference to this update. And we will, of course, as before we did, these modules are very, very remembered because we have a very particular methodology that is not only very, very interactive, but also has a lot of games and elements to interact in groups, which cities later take into their work with the community. And we will do this again, so we are already thinking about what kind of game animation we can use. Then we will roll out these learning modules together with you and pilot it in some of the places and with a partner. But this is not the only piece. We also have the work of the partners. So we have the UNDESA recovery training tool. So this will not be only UNDESA, it will be a main outcome of our project. So we will have a training tool that looks a little bit what can we learn all together on the elements we have provided, but in particular on the feasibility, bringing this work to scale. So the VLR e-learning course, also UNDESA has prepared one, UNICE as well. So we look into a lot of knowledge already prepared, and of course the experience of rolling this out. And we look very much forward that this will be then becoming a new recovery training tool from all of us, and this will be led by UNDESA, and the point will be adapt existing guidelines and manuals, do a training tool that enhances and utilize the VLR process to support urban sustainable and green recovery, and of course not only strengthen the VLR, but also to create a lot of synergies between the work we are doing. So we are very excited about this process. And we also see that, for example, for UNDESA and UNICE, the recovery is an important element because here we might have this particular situation, as I said before, in the crisis, we have an accelerator. So we have not only to look in the crisis as some element that can depress us, but that accelerates decisions and that creates awareness and a lot of questions. So that is an opportunity we have to use. So we will do a small advisory team for this tool development, where you all are invited to be part, and you can see there will be representatives of the cities, of the partners, and this will be a permanent dialogue about what is useful, what not, how can we bring the experiences forward. So we look into 2 years of a really dense exchange and then come up with a charter and a work all together. The same for UNICE. UNICE also has an e-learning course on the SDGs VLR and has done this with a Center of Excellence in Geneva that is here with us. And this course is slightly shorter, for example, than others. And I'm very much looking forward to see this because, of course, we need to connect. We need to, probably the same people will attend all the courses, but we also need to remind that one of the big elements of our strength, we consider that we have United Nations and United Cities. So, of course, we hope that the VLR, the opportunity of VLR is not only an opportunity for local government, but also for national government. And this is, of course, to be seen in training courses and in rolling out elements that we all, in the end, we will strengthen the multi-governance. And we look forward that this partnership is very strong on this. So thank you. This was an insight, and I don't know if other partners would like to add something. I have now presented also your slides. Gunara and Carol, please don't hesitate to add anything I might have forgotten. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. thank you very much. This is a very good presentation, and I mean the learning and capacity building component, as your colleagues have probably understood, is very much central for this project, but also for our joint work among the partners. UCLG has been leading on one side, and all the colleagues and partners have been leading on another, and the complementarity of these processes is very high, and we hope to offer our partners with the most complete set of tools and training for SDG localization and VLRs. Now, in the documents that you have received, you have just a little plan of what we aim to do in 2023. So I suggest that we can all go eventually to that calendar so that you can have a bit of a reference. We are aiming to launch the second module, the updated second module that Sarah was mentioning during the UN Habitat Assembly in June. And then in the meantime, rolling out the online trainings plus piloting the module. I am looking now at colleagues from DESA EC in case Gulnara, Jürgen, Carol, Sam, in case you want to add anything. Otherwise, partners from the cities, countries, if you have any question, please don't hesitate, or any participant, don't hesitate to raise your hand or put your question in the chat. I am not sure. Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone. I'm just trying to look also. Okay, I think that there is no specific question. This is all clear. You will be receiving all the slides in addition to the documents that you have already received. So in case you will need a bit more information, you will find also hyperlinks that will direct you to what is already available. The VLR MOOC will be launched soon, UNEC e-learning course as well. UNDESA is just starting developing the tool, so it will be available a bit further throughout the year. That's exactly. Indeed, Benim. Sorry, I'm looking at the question of Merim. Is if these trainings are open for public? Absolutely, yes. These are open for everyone. We are going to tailor, let's say, a training offers and training program specifically for the project participants, but these are open to everyone, and that's exactly the aim of the project, where the experiences of the countries and the learning project process where the countries and cities are going through is not only dedicated for the cities themselves, but for everyone that wants to join. So yes, it's a good opportunity, and actually we hope to enrich then these processes, these learning courses with experiences from the cities themselves, the cities that we are seeing today. And so I was mentioning UNDESA's VLR training tool will be released next year, and along also the module 2, as I mentioned, during the UN Habitat Assembly in June. So, well, we will start online, and we will slowly get into hopefully in-person opportunities for learning. There is wonderful material that we will learn all from. If that is good for everyone, I will again remind you to please have a look at the documents, and thank a lot Sarah for her presentation, for being with us today. I know that you have a busy day, and it's also a holiday for you, so thank you for taking the time out of your holidays. I know that you have to jump on another meeting, but please, if you stay as long as you can, okay. Colleagues, I will now turn to the second presentation, which is going to be linked to the voluntary local review process, which is, if you want, the very core of the technical support of the project. I will start sharing the presentation, then give the floor to Gulnara, which will go a bit more into the work and the details of the work that UNC has been doing with regards to the guidelines and some of the smart city support we have seen before. The colleagues also touching upon that component, which is very important. what I'm going to mention is just a very quick overview of what VLRs are, voluntary local reviews are, where do we stand globally, so that we are all on the same page, and then we get more and more into the details of the region, and then the methodology that we're going to follow. Gulnara, please feel free also to stop me and to add anything if I'm missing throughout the presentation. Ideally, the voluntary local reviews, there is no universal definition in the sense that there are, if we look at the voluntary local reviews that have been published until now in the past 3-4 years, many differ. Each city contextualized the tool and the VLR process based on its own context, necessity, and priorities. Surely, the general and common understanding is that a voluntary local review is a report on the SDG progress within a given territory, and that is normally used by more and more and gradually more and more adopted by local and regional governments to report on their progresses against the SDGs. The key potential of the voluntary local review is that the development of the voluntary local review, and for example, I'm thinking about what François Jacob was saying before about the need for more coordination, the need for the siloing, and the need for access to data, and the need for effectiveness. Actually, the process of developing a voluntary local review can substantially accelerate these dimensions of development, and these that are all linked to the localization of the SDGs. Voluntary local review can strengthen data environments at the local level by producing and supporting cities to produce new data and adopt new indicators. Enhance policy coherence because they allow for a review of the existing policies, both at the local level as well as vertically with what is existing at the national level. It enhances strategic planning because it can help to identify some priorities based on the gaps that it identifies. Of course, as we all know and we discussed, a key component of this project is global and regional advocacy, which means that cities and local governments are more and more positioned internationally to make sure that their voices are heard and that their processes feed into those, international processes and decision making. And finally, the two key points that we have already discussed, through VLRs, multi-level governance mechanism for SDGs reporting and implementation can be strengthened, and which in turn strengthen the national capacities for delivery on the SDGs. And finally, most, and not all of them, but VLRs are normally based on stakeholders engagement processes, which bring local communities closer and to decision making, and of course aware of the SDGs. Right now, globally, we have 168 VLRs published in 2016 from 133 local and regional governments coming from 39 different countries. Now, if we look at the percentage, Europe and the Latin Americas, Europe for sure, by far, is the continent that has been producing most VLRs. Latin America and Asia are following with just 38 and 37 VLRs published respectively. Now, if you want to have a look to the totality of the VLRs published, both Habitat and DESA have their own platforms. Please don't hesitate to have a look, and you will see a bit the full list of VLRs existing in order for you to have a clear idea of what a VLR can be. Now, what is interesting to see is that the voluntary local review is not only a tool for big cities and capitals. It has been developed by different regional, by different governments at the subnational level, both municipal, city level, but also at the regional and state level. We have 43 VLRs published by regions or states. They are published by smaller cities, metropolitan areas, districts, including rural areas. It's quite interesting, the diversity. The VLR tool can be applied and applies itself to the whole diversity of the local dimensions. Of course, member states are more and more including voluntary local reviews and local governments within their VNR processes, specifically when it comes to reflecting the VLR into their VNRs. What is the potential of the VLRs? The more that we are developing VLRs, the more information can come from the local level that can actually substantially complement the VNRs. That more and more also VNRs are becoming an instrument for analyzing the status of SDG progresses and hence orienting planning at the national level. Now, just a quick overview of what has been done by the sorry. There you go. What has been done by the colleagues and all the partners in the past 3 years. The consortium of partners globally has been very much consolidating itself with Habitat and UNDESA working at a global level. UNSC focused on the regional support, and UCLG bringing the local constituency of the constituency of local governments closer to the SDG localization and the VLR work. We have been delivering technical support to cities to develop VLR, peer learning, capacity building, connecting this process to the regional and global processes, and really working closely with national counterparts to increase the linkages with the VLRs. This to say that the components and the tracks and the support that we are today proposing is not something new. It's something that we have been slowly building together as a consortium of partners in the past years. I will leave the floor now to Gulnara, just to say that there are different kind of guidelines, and you might know each of the partners have developed guidelines. You've heard Gulnara and also Karon reflecting upon it in their opening remarks. What is important to know is that the regional dimension is critical for this specific project, and that all the guidelines are coming together into a methodology that really builds on the strength of all the guidelines, specifically looking at the regional level. Gulnara, maybe over to you for what's come next.
Thank you very much, Martino. I think this was a very comprehensive overview of what the VLRs are. So speaking about the guidelines for VLRs in the UNEC region, I would like to highlight the point is that what is important, I mean, before we started to do the guidelines, we conducted kind of a survey of the cities and organized the workshops. So, you know, I think in addition of very important points that Martina, you mentioned, that VLRs really should help this multi-level governance, right? So that when we have volunteer national reviews, they should be based actually on the volunteer local reviews. And we know that, for instance, in Northern Europe, that's the case. Or in Italy, and my colleague Mia is here, who was working on subnational volunteer local reviews, that's also the case, right? And I think this is an issue that we probably, as a way forward, we need to discuss with the national government. So engagement today of the national governments and the UNRC offices is very much appreciated. So we really would like to discuss this approach. This is very important because it's very important politically, because as I mentioned in my opening as well, you know, this new multilateralism where also the cities have a very important role, you know, at the global level is very important. So I think that one of the issues that we definitely need to do. So I very much support Martino's this point that you mentioned, explained already. The second point that the cities during the surveys and workshops told us that it's important that the voluntary local reviews, first of all, bring kind of economic and social value to the local development. And this is not an additional additional burden on them, right? And I really appreciated today presentations of the cities where they said, you know, we have issues with housing, we have issues with urban transport, we have issues on the social development with vulnerable groups, with youth. So and I really appreciate all the partners. We have a very pragmatic approach to the development of voluntary local reviews, and this is what we also tried to reflect as much as we could in the regional guidelines, that this is not, VLR is not a separate document. It should be part of the planning process of the city, and it should be bringing the added value of the economic development and social development of the city. It should be helping the cities, you know, to engage vulnerable groups. Yeah, so it should help the capacity development. What you mentioned also, Martino, about the data, at UNEC, historically, we're working on the key performance indicators of smart sustainable cities, which is kind of a very efficient set of indicators, which also harmonized with the SDG indicators. But no matter which system of the data collection we are using, what is important is that it's an opportunity for a city to develop a capacity, but also to develop their own database, because decisions have to be made based on the evidence. Any planning process has to be based on the evidence. And part of the official statistics at the national level, cities actually are not provided with this opportunity to submit their data into national official system. So there are really no standards in most of the countries to collect of the data. So I think this data collection process should be seen as an opportunity by cities to collect the data, and to collect the data for their own development, not just for the VLR. Next slides. So this is what I mentioned already. This is the KPI for smart sustainable cities. Next slide. So we, and so we developed, lately we developed several smart city profiles based using the key performance indicators for smart sustainable cities. So you see here for Astana, for Voznesensk in Ukraine, for Goris in Armenia. We just finished also the Bishkek smart system city profiles, and also we worked with kind of more developed cities, like cities in Norway, to develop these reports. Next one. And what was also important for smart sustainable cities profiles is that based on recommendations, we work with the cities also on looking into possibility of funding, but also developing capacities of the cities for looking for the funding for their projects. Because if we want to accelerate achieving sustainable development goals, it's our shared responsibility to look also for the resources for implementation for specific projects, which can bring us closer to achieving the SDGs. So from this point of view, just to conclude that we think that the Smart Sustainable Cities profile process is very much in line with this discussion on evaluating capacity of the cities to achieve SDGs. So, and I think it was a very good preparatory process for the cities for the VLRs for the future. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Gulnara. And indeed, I think that specifically the cases you mentioned, Bishkek, Norway, these are excellent example of how data collection can then bring towards not only profiles but also the analysis, and can build the blocks for developing VLRs and SDG processes. UNEC has clearly been leading the way in these analysis and in these activities. And I think that as consortium of partners, much of it will inspire the work that together we will do on voluntary local reviews in supporting cities and countries in voluntary local reviews. So the work on the KPIs and the smart sustainable cities is actually central for the future of VLRs, at least the ones that we will be jointly support. The slides that I will present build exactly on this process and builds on the guidelines, the regional guidelines, and some of the experiences that all the partners have been having in technically supporting cities throughout the globe. Now, to make it clear, as much clearer as possible, because it might be complex. What we are going to look into are the preconditions for the creation of meaningful VLR, the different phases of development, and within the phases, which are the tracks and let's say work streams that we are going to follow. Starting from the preconditions, what we have learned in our experience is that a meaningful VLR, be it a VLR that not only reports technically on the status of the SDGs and progresses at the local level, but that can also be used to inspire planning and strategies and to strengthen multi-level connection, needs to be politically supported. Sometimes we have seen that VLRs have been mainly led or wanted by, technical coordination offices, consultants being brought on board, but then, beyond presenting it in few workshops here and there, the meaningfulness of that report was not achieved because of the lack of political commitment and support to that specific report. Another important, it is not exactly necessary because VLRs are possible in every different context, but access to a minimal amount of data, reliable data that we can test the source from, it's quite important. VLRs, of course, as they are report on the status of advancements, rely on quantitative data. But the good thing about the VLR process is that, as I mentioned before, they are that kind of tool and process to kickstarting also the collection of maybe missing data. So maybe for the first VLR, we don't aim to have, the platinum and golden one. We just have to, aim to a bronze, and then the next step will be stronger. So building a process that actually strengthens capacities is what we aim to. And finally, it's important to have the institutional support to engage communities. Local and regional governments are the conveners of local communities within their territories. Hence, the centralities and commitment of local governments in reaching out to local communities is very important. In terms of phases, we can identify, this is a systematization of the VLR process per se, and we can identify 4 different phases. The inception one, which is the preparation of the VLR with all the institutional commitments, the creation of the coordination team, and making sure that both the institutional as well as the technical are prepared to kickstart the process. The 2 central phases that will last more or less 6 months of work are the situation analysis and strategic planning. Indeed, the situation analysis is the one that brings together the data analysis and the creation of the narrative around the data analysis, which will come out of qualitative, but also quantitative, but also qualitative processes through the engagement of stakeholders. The strategic planning is that step that we would like to see out of this new generation of VLR that I was talking before, where the data that is analyzed is not only used for reporting, but at least it helps us to kickstart a planning process that goes towards recovery, resilience, and also that goes towards informing the existing, if any, the strategic plan for the implementation of the SDGs. Finally, we have the finalization phase where all of this draft will come into an advanced and final draft that needs to be reviewed and validated and finally launched in one of those events that we were mentioning before. So 4 different phases. Normally here we have a span of 10 months. What we have experienced is that the production of VLR can vary between 6 to 10 months, depending on the availability of resources in terms of data, information, and the coordination existing at the local level. Then in terms of tracks and outputs, what I was mentioning before. So we are going to follow, and you're going to see them both in the left as well as the right. The different tracks are the data, the stakeholders inclusion, the SDG research, and the vision and strategy. All of these tracks are integrated into the phases that I mentioned before. Of course, these are not, let's say, chronologically happening one after the other. They're going to overlap at some points, but in terms of thinking where are we going to focus our attention, these are the different tracks, the data tracks. So how do we measure progress? We need to analyze data, indicators, also reflecting about what Sinija was presenting before. Not that whole set of indicators that we need to adopt, KPI, the global monitoring framework. The global monitoring framework, as I mentioned, and I will show later, has been adopted by the UN Statistical Commission. And out of the data track that we are going to support, we hope to develop some global monitoring framework reports that are also going to strengthen your own voluntary local review. For the moment, the global monitoring framework has been piloted by few countries and will directly put your city at the very top of that piloting process that is going also to expand opportunities for cooperation and visibility at the international level. The inclusion track. From a UN Habitat and from the partners' perspective, there is no VLR, or at least there is a VLR as long as we make sure that stakeholders are included and consulted in order to make sure that the data that we have collected from a quantitative process is also completed and validated by the stakeholders themselves. All of this data and research process is then integrated into SDG discussion papers. Imagine papers per each of the goal that actually review the status of advancement of the SDGs within the territory and uses the data to create what? To create the vision and the strategy. So from the data that we have analyzed, from the inclusion of stakeholders and the data that is collected from the stakeholders engagement process, we put everything within some, let's say, policy paper, research papers that then are used to create that kind of looking forward and vision that helps us to transform the VLR into an instrument for planning and into an instrument for actually long-term processes. I would like to focus then a second on what is the global monitoring framework, which is going to be referenced as the indicators framework along with other existing one. I would like to underline again the importance of the work that Gulnaras and colleagues have done with the KPIs, which are going to be integrated within this process. The global monitoring framework has been approved by the UN Statistical Commission last March as the framework to monitor the SDGs and the New Urban Agenda progress at the local level. It actually defines domains of development: societal, economic, environment, cultural, governance, and it crosses this with the city objectives: safe and peaceful, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. As you will see, the city objectives are extracted from SDG level, making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, and it cross-references them with the domains of sustainable development. Per each of the, let's say, these. As you can see, I'm highlighting in yellow. Per each of the boxes, you will see indicators that will help you measuring how much your city is safer in economy, inclusive in culture, resilient with regards to culture. So we are cross-referencing the domains to the different city objectives. This is the SDG wheel, and I will not go into the details because this is not the case for this workshop. But as you can see, what we are aiming to do is measuring the status of development of the city with regards to the different domains. Here you will find them: economy, culture, governance, and here you can find then the city objectives: sustainable, resilient, inclusive, measuring the status of advancement of the city against the domains and the city objective, and then seeing which are the gaps. So for example, we can see that safe economy, safe and peaceful, is actually rating very low. How do I fill this gap? This is the objective of the research that we are going to do, so that we can get to this level of achievement. So how do I measure, and which are the initiatives that I need to take in order to fill this gap? This is how we are going to use the global monitoring framework, and this is how hopefully we are going to translate then the data into the narrative of the report. This is again a little structure that you have been receiving as well in the documents with the different tracks, cross-references with the phases, along the 10 months of work that we have ahead. What we aim to have is the UMF report by the end of month 4th, the SDG discussion paper by the end of month 6, coordinated with a large engagement stakeholders process that will get then to the validation of the VLR and the launch of the VLR. So the outputs of the different tracks are going to be finally can be seen as independent processes, but are going to be finally integrated into a last product, into a last report, which is our VLR, which is going to be constituting, if you want, a very new approach to the VLR itself. Well, these are examples. I'm not going to actually to stop too much on it, but making sure that you're not the first ones, and that we are really taking inspiration from not only the experience of our own organizations, but from other local and regional governments that in the past 2 years have been developing and testing, have been making lots of efforts and strides in advancing reporting towards the SDGs. I will stop here because I think that I've shared a lot of information already. But maybe I'll stop it here and open the floor to questions in case anyone would like to raise hand or put any question in the chat. This is a good moment to do so. Colleagues from the partners, in case you want to complement with anything. Otherwise, we can skip and go. Yes, Tanya, please. Can you make Tanya presenter, please? Yes.
Hello, everybody. I want to ask. I see on this table that there is 10 months for phases for that methodology, and we have approximately 2 years for that project.
Yes.
Or
Yes, indeed. So the project is the development of the voluntary local review is the central pillar of the technical cooperation. But the project doesn't stop with the development of the VLR. It goes on with learning and the global advocacy. So the 10 months are the tentative and average timing for the development of the VLR. But once the VLR is developed, that doesn't mean the end of the project. Actually, if we want, and if you want, Tanya, in my opinion, looking at this project as the kickstart and the seed for longer processes to grow, actually the real work, I mean not the real work, but a good part and a very important part of our work starts right after the development of the VLR. How do we use the VLR to orient those strategic planning, to kickstart long-term SDG localization processes? So it is actually very good if we finish and start and conclude the VLR within the 2 years of implementation, so that we have a few months to start reflecting on how to use the VLR itself, while we continue with the implementation of the other components, the learning and capacity building, but also the participation in the regional and global processes, as mentioned before.
That's great.
Super. Any other question? Please don't hesitate. I'm looking again at the colleagues from RCOs, colleagues from the cities, countries. Any question that comes to your mind, this is a good opportunity to raise your hand. Okay, then I guess yes. Mohammed from UCLG, please.
Can you hear me?
Very well.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Furkan. I'm a project assistant at UCL Geneva, and we as UCL Geneva have been very active in SDG localization and local monitoring of the SDGs in the Geneva region, and have been actively involved in multiple of them that has been drafted in our region. I just had this little question about this project. Maybe I missed it during this event, but is there any peer learning opportunities for these cities to come together with other similar cities, with similar level of development, to learn from each other? That was my question.
Thanks a lot, Mohammed. And indeed, absolutely, yes. The idea is that both the learning and capacity components, so when the piloting of the modules too, then I'm sure that, being part of UCLG, very well, as well as the advocacy moments, including the VLR VNR studios. I mean, if you missed the introductory part of the presentation, we will share the presentation afterwards, are going not only to be targeting and supporting the work of the pilot cities and countries, but also are going to be expanded to everyone. Okay, so of course we are going to have a focus on the regional dimension because the regional dimension is very important, but these processes are going to be open to countries and cities from the whole region and from the globe. So absolutely yes, and specifically the work of UCLG MEWA that we know very well is very important, and we hope to have also some of the cities that you have been supporting developing VLRs feeding and providing their inputs to the process that this project hopes to support. So definitely, yes, everything is going to be open to partners to join. And Merim, definitely starting from the first part of your question, which is not question of your message, New York has been invited Bishkek to join the VLR declaration. Please. I think UN Habitat is a supporter of the VLR declaration itself. We have a strong partnership with New York based, as we have an office based there as well. UNDESA is based in New York, so feel free and to join the declaration. Hopefully, also going back to that political buy-in that we identified as a precondition, for a meaningful VLR. I think the declaration can be strengthening that process. And in terms of challenging in data at the local level, we are aware of it, and not only of the status and the context of Bishkek, but many contexts around the globe are actually very challenging in terms of production of data and identification of the right data to measure against the indicators that we want to measure. So this doesn't prevent us to do a meaningful VLR, as we said before, because again, the added value of the VLR doesn't stop at the reporting level, but it's more rooted into the process that this report can create in terms of coordination, in terms of awareness, in terms of first steps in order to create data that then gradually will be able to inform more and more the strategic planning at the city level. So challenging data contexts are actually the best context for us to work with, because that's where we need to work in order to strengthen our local governments. Yes, technical support in country and the expertise gaps that we can approach. Definitely, I think that the technical support. So we will have of course the project relies on the expertise and the support of the expertise from UN Habitat, UNDESA, and UNSC, which will provide general support and expertise to the production of VLRs. Local consultants will support directly the local governments in setting up the coordination and in drafting and collecting the data, analyzing the data, drafting the voluntary local review. I think that in terms of expertise gaps is more than expertise gaps, I would say expertise complementarities. So many agencies differently country to country have been working in collecting data, UNDP, UNICEF, FAO, IOM, just to mention a few. So this is for certainly not the first project and not the first time that a UN agency or a development partner works along with cities to collect data. And I think responding also to the challenge that Merim was highlighting, we need to bring together the agencies in order for the local government to access the wider, I would say, amount of data possible to make sure that the VLR builds on what is existing, so that we don't reinvent the wheel, but they actually harmonize the UN support at the local level through access to data. That's how I see it. And then I think the other component and added value of bringing together expertise from the development partners and the UN is that in the development of the VLR, the more agencies are involved, the better. And secondly, with the VLR identifying gaps, that's where we can, connect the city with the right agency that can provide the right support to address that specific gap. A full coordination and full support from the RCO, Manucher, it's of course, as you can imagine, more than critical. Any further question? Thanks to you, Manucher. Tanya, I guess that was on old end. Okay, then if there are no further questions, please, I think that one of the things that we will keep doing is, don't hesitate to share your questions with us. We will make sure to answer via this chat, via email, so that all of your doubts are answered. I will conclude here then this email, being mindful also, this presentation, being mindful also all the time, and I'll pass the word to Jürgen for the last part of the presentation, which is going to be on the advocacy track and what he's expecting for the project for the next upcoming month. Jürgen, the floor is yours. Now I'm stopping my presentation.
Thank you, Martino. Let me share the presentation. All right. I hope you can see it. Sorry, I have some background noise. My daughter's waking up. We are really excited working with the 4 cities in this project. And I hope that one or the other representatives from the cities will be involved in the many events that we are foreseeing in the next couple of years. Martino has given at the beginning an overview of what is coming up in the next, let's say, 2 years in global events. At the global level, we have several events where we have the opportunity to share practices, provide advocacy for VLRs as well as the localization of SDGs. One here in New York, where Desser, Carol, myself, and the team who works on the localization, sorry, one back, have the opportunity. One is the High-Level Political Forum, or HLPF. It meets annually every July. Next year in 2023, it's going to be 10 to 19 July, where the HLPF meets. The HLPF provides political leadership, guidance, and recommendation on sustainable development. And another major part of the HLPF is it provides a space for governments to share, review progress on the implementation of sustainable development commitments at the national level. One space is basically the Voluntary National Reviews, the VLRs. From the 4 countries where we have the cities represent here, particularly Tajikistan is presenting their VNR next year. So we are looking forward also on how Tajikistan looks at the localization aspect of it. Now, each HLPF looks at a set of goals and does an in-depth review of where we stand at the time. For the 2023 HLPF, we're looking at particularly the goals 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. And particular 11 on sustainable cities and communities is particularly important for us when we look in the context of VLRs and local development. Now, other events, the HLPF is happening annually. However, next year we have an SDG summit. The GA conducts a summit every 4 years. The last summit was 2019. As you recall, one of the major outcomes in 2019 was basically the decade of action, what was commenced 2020 and following. Now for 2023, we see another summit coming up, the difference between the HLPF, what is part basically of ECOSOC, the SDG summit is part of the General Assembly and convenes head of states at a higher level and really look at the process and the progress what the 2030 agendas are making, and for the next 4-year period, what are the highlights? I mean, we expect an adoption of a political declaration at the SDG summit, similar than what happened in 2019. We expect a renewed awareness in our societies of the choices we can make to influence our future. And we have seen, and several speakers have mentioned, that we had several crises, multiple crises hitting us in the last years. And basically after the last summit, where we had the decade of action, rather than advancing what we were hoping, we had the advancement of the SDG challenged by these crises. COVID first, but now we have crises on energy, we have crises in the environment, and particularly at the local level, we need to find responses that are not immediate short-term crisis responses, but longer-term responses, as also Françoise mentioned earlier. So we need recommendations that break new ground and enjoy ownership by all. So involving all partners is key. Besides the HLPF and SDG summit, Habitat has quite a packed agenda next year. There are several items what we happen annually, but what we're looking forward is the UN Habitat Assembly, what is happening every 4 years. So in 2000, prior to the HLPF, actually, from 5 to 9th of June, we have the UN Habitat Assembly taking place in Nairobi, Kenya. The Habitat Assembly convenes all member states, 193 member states of the UN, and as I mentioned before, only happening every 4 years. So what we expect for the June meeting is to identify key issues and areas of focus for UN Habitat, review major trends that related to human settlements and urbanization. We expect to adopt resolutions, declarations, and recommendations, as well as recommend strategies for coherent implementation of urban and human settlements dimension of the 2030 agenda, the NUA, and other global agendas. Examine and approve Habitat's strategic plan and the review of the Secretary General's quadrennial report on the implementation of the NUA is expected as well. Now, beside the Habitat Assembly in June, this will be followed by the HLPFs and by the summit in September. October will be rather packed. We have the Urban October, that's 31 days where we have focus on promoting a better urban future involving different events from every part of the world. If I focus there on the following that, we will have the World Urban Forum. That was established in 2001 to examine one of the most pressing issues faced by the world today, rapid urbanization and its impact. World Urban Forum is nowadays the premier global conference on sustainable urbanization, what is convened by Habitat. This year, we will have the 11th edition of the Urban Forum that was held in Poland. The active participation of local and regional governments and their associations during the forum represented a step forward for stronger and more inclusive multilateralism. We had 1,645 local and regional government representatives attending, of which 105 were mayors from 33 countries. The key role of local and regional governments was also celebrated during the opening ceremony of the World Urban Forum, including the participation of the mayor of Kitchener and the USCLG president on behalf of the Global Task Force on Local and Regional Governments. After this successful edition in 2024, the World Urban Forum is going to take place under the theme SDG Localization. The 12th edition is going to take place in Egypt. City and dates are still to be confirmed. So we hope that during one of these events, either at the HLPF, at the World Urban Forum, we will have space to feature some of the cities and that you can share experience as well. I will pass on to my colleague Gulnara to give a presentation of the events organized by ECE, starting with the Forum of Mayors. I think that's a new event in 2023. Gulnara, you have the floor. Gulnara, can you hear me? Well, if Gulnara is not there, let me take the floor and just present
No.
what. Okay.
Sorry. That's yeah. It's yes. So thank you so much, Jürgen. I think it was very detailed. So I really tried to smoothly go on to the UNEC events. So the Forum of Mayors was, the first one in 2020, which was really in the middle of the pandemic. And I think it was kind of lots of interest from the mayors to really, to have a platform also at the UN level to exchange the experiences, the best practices. And so this kind of the shared understanding about, at one hand, their own city priorities, but also kind of shared priorities for more sustainable development. The mayors who came together in 2020, they reflected in the Geneva Declaration of Mayors. Next slide, please. So Geneva Declaration of Mayors really was a very important document. So it's looking really into people-centered approaches of sustainable development. And I think this is what we all also are trying to do with this project. At one hand, to build on capacities of cities to address, first of all, the consequence of the COVID pandemic, but also natural disasters, climate change, and really to promote higher quality of life to everybody, to all people in the city. So this is what the Geneva Declaration is about. And then the second, next slide. So the second Forum of Mayors was in 2022. So this year in April, it was in Geneva. And it was, this time it was done not back-to-back to the Committee on Urban Development. So if 2020, it was really back-to-back to the committee where really the mayors had the opportunity to speak to their national governments working on urban matters. The second Forum of Mayors was taking place back-to-back to the Regional Forum Sustainable Development. So it really allowed also to communicate to the national governments coming from many different ministries, not only ministries of urban development or housing. So this is, you see some of the pictures. What was interesting about the second forum that we started quite many new initiatives, including initiative on early reconstruction of Ukrainian cities in Mykolaiv and Kharkiv. So there were quite interesting speakers. So we really hope that, next slide, that we will have the next Forum of Mayors in 2023. It's intended to be in October, back-to-back to the annual session of the Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Management. Exact formats will be still discussed. Of the Forum of Mayors will be discussed on 13th of January. So we will be actually coming with more details after 13th of January back to you, because we are an intergovernmental organization, so we need to we have a decision of the Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Management on the Forum of Mayors. So now we need to get this decision also from our Executive Committee, which brings missions of all the 56 member states. And of course, the Regional Forum Sustainable Development, which will be organized prior to the high-level political forum, about which Jürgen already mentioned. So Regional Forum also will be looking into SDG 11, among others, and Jürgen already explained in detail about what SDGs will be discussed. So I think for us, it's really very important forum, which will be end of March. It will be 29th, 30th of March. We will be also organizing a city event. So I think it's a good meeting place here in Geneva at the Palais des Nations for any recaps or review of work of this project as well. So we are looking forward to hopefully having at least some of you at the Regional Forum. Next. So thank you, Jürgen. So I think it's back to you. The discussion.
Thank you.
And looking forward to also having you at these two regional events.
Thank you, Gulnara. Let me open the floor for questions. If there's no questions, then I hand over back to Martino. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jürgen. Thank you, Gulnara. Apologies, my headphones actually run out of battery, so you might hear me a bit differently now. I hope you can still hear me good. I think this was the last part of the presentation. Colleagues, a lot of information I know for all of you, and from the technical side to the learning and the advocacy. I see Tanya's putting a fee, is asking if there is a fee for the forum. Well, as far as I know, no. At least the forums that we are discussing about, there is no specific fee for cities to participate. But please, Gulnara, Jürgen, if you have different information, you can correct me. But there should not be any fee for cities or partners to take part of it. For sure, there is a strict registration that needs to happen well in advance, specifically for in-person participation, but no fee applied. Gulnara.
Yes, of course, I confirm, Martina.
Super.
Any UN meeting is open for public as well, observers. So, as we know that United Nations actually are much more open than it may be seen sometimes from outside.
Indeed. So we really hope to use these events to organize sessions, workshops, both high level as well as technical, the VLR studios. Some of it will take place in person, some others will take place online, depending on the availability of partners and a budget, of course, constraints. We need to take a bit care of all the different components, but we really hope to use these regional and global processes to make sure that all of your work is then reflected and feeds into the debate, and then the debate feeds back into your work. So I think I would close here this part of the presentation with the technical presentations, and again, we in the agenda have seen a space for the UN Resident Coordination offices to provide feedback or inputs. Anything from your side, colleagues, before we close and wrap up the meeting? See a few of the colleagues from the resident coordinators have connected. Some have left. I think that again, because I'm mindful of the time and I don't want to drag too much partners into longer meetings. If anyone is connected, please put your remarks, questions in the chat,
and we will make sure to address them as much as possible right away. Otherwise, I think it's time now to. I will really open the last round of question and interventions for anyone. Please feel free to put again your questions, your remarks in the chat. Raise your hand. This is the last occasion before I wrap up the meeting, and please do it so while I wrap up the meeting. So, colleagues, I think that we are coming to an end of the workshop. It has been a long one. It has been a very informative one, both for us as I hope for you. I hope that you got a bit of more of a sense of what we are looking into for the next few months, what we are going to do together for the next few months, what we hope to achieve at the end of this path, which is not really an end, if we want. It's a beginning of something. So the development of the VLR and the participation in both the learning and capacity as well as in the global and regional processes is the first step for us to continue working together, and specifically for you to strengthen your development path at the local level with the collaboration of all partners involved at the national, regional, and global. So we will, as for the next steps, you will hear from the project team, UNHABITAT, UNICE, DESA, and UCLG concerning future activities. We will reach out to you for the coordination of the activities at the local level, the selection of the local consultants, the kickstart of the activities, as well as at the local level, as well as the upcoming opportunities for workshops and participation in events. Please always refer to the documents that have been shared with you, where you can find the most updated information. We will keep updating those documents and on a regular basis have coordinating meetings with the city, country partners, as well as with all the stakeholders, UNRCOs involved, in order to provide updates on the status of the project. Again, we hope to kickstart the activities rather soon at the beginning of next year, and to have a solid process of specifically linked to the VLR concluded by the end of 2023, because, you know, in between the Forum of Mayors and the World Urban Forum, those are the events that we are targeting. So I think there is no need to repeat again what has been said. We keep in touch via email. We are going to have soon opportunities, hopefully, to meet in person through missions or events that are going to take place in the region. And otherwise, we keep in touch via email and online. I am at this point closing the workshop. Thank really all the participants, specifically the cities and the country representatives, but also the implementing partners, Gulnara, Van, Jürgen, Carol, Sami, Sara, everyone that has been taking place, and a huge hug and thanks also to my team, because it has been a bit of a process to put also the logistics and the coordination together, and they have been doing a great job behind the curtains, I would say. So, and of course, thanks to the interpreters. Lots of work today. Thank you for your work, colleagues, as well, for the interpretation provided. Any words from Gulnara, Carol, if you want to say something, please, before we close. Otherwise, it has been a great pleasure to be working with you.
No, big thanks to you, Martino, and to all the colleagues and interpreters and the cities.
Super. Then see you very soon, colleagues. Thank you again, and we keep in touch. Please don't hesitate to reach out for any questions. Please, we are at your availability, and we keep in touch very soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you again.
Bye, colleagues. Thank you, Martina.